Watch out, guys. We have to run from the haunted mansion. Just kidding, it's a green screen. Mansions aren't real, fucker. That's right, I have a green screen now, I have lights now, and I don't know how to use either yet. This video's gonna look like shit.
Hi, Editing Lucas here. Actually, the green screen I set up is so terribly set up that it's almost unusable, so I'll be using it very sparingly in this video. Oops, maybe next time.
So I'm recording this on November 4th, which is the day after election, so I'm a little stressed, but I thought what could help would be talking about a bunch of movies I watched for some reason. The Paranormal Activity series. Halloween just passed, and so me and my friends wanted to get into the Halloween mood. We decided over Discord to watch the Paranormal Activity series in the strangest order possible. We started with Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, which is like the 4th or 5th movie, and then just sort of jumped around that way. So I have a very interesting sort of perspective on the series. It was my first time watching the complete series. Beforehand, I had only seen the first one, and that was a very, very long time ago. But as we were watching the series in this very disjointed order, I came to realize just how insanely varied the quality of these films were. And I started to realize, wait a fucking second, I think I have thoughts about these movies, which is very strange to me because I went in expecting them to be nothing of note or importance, just something to throw on with a jump scare or two for us to laugh about, just to generally get in the spooky mood, because none of us have an emotional attachment to a lot of those old Disney movies like Halloween Town or Hocus Pocus, so we didn't have anything to fall back on. We tried watching Scary Movie 2 for a couple of minutes, and it was really bad, so we stopped. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting to kind of just go back and take a look at this series that seems to have just sort of faded out. It's technically still an ongoing series because they are planning on making a new one. Apparently in about 2 years it's supposed to come out. But as of right now, it's a dead series. But it was super popular. It like dominated the market. There is a while where like every Halloween there was a new Paranormal Activity in the theaters. That's like a thing you could count on. So why was it so popular? Were these movies any good even? Why did people like them, hate them, you know? Let's just talk about them. What else are we gonna do? Think about politics? So like I said, I watched it in a very strange order, starting with Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. Then we watched Paranormal Activity 2, 3, 4, 1, Paranormal Activity, the Ghost Dimension. So we were chronological for a bit there. And that chronological portion was really important because it really solidified how the contents of these films get significantly worse as they go on. It's like a steep downhill, and then marked ones is a little bit better, and then just like the furthest it's gone. So let's start from the very beginning, and let's track that downward spiral. Okay, so Paranormal Activity 1 comes out in 2007, and the whole gimmick or shtick around it is that it is marketed as if it were totally real found footage, in the same way that like Blair Witch or Cannibal Holocaust were marketed to the mainstream. This idea that it's in the found footage format, but unlike something like, say, Cloverfield, it is trying to actually convince you that it's a real happening. And for the most part, it could be successful. As a paranormal skeptic who doesn't believe in ghosts, at no point did I think it was real, obviously also knowing that it is a huge Paramount Pictures series at this point, and that they're all actors, I know it's not real. But at the time, I can understand how some people could see it as real, because overall, especially in context of what happens later in the series, it's pretty grounded and believable, and that's like the strongest part of this movie. And this is the wild part. It's a good movie. It's like actually genuinely pretty fucking good. I was really surprised at how good it was, which sucks for me because I immediately followed it up with the worst one in the series, but oh well. The film is grounded and sincere and concise. It is pretty well paced. Everything has this nice upward momentum to it. The happenings, the ghostings, or whatever you want to call them, are reasonable and believable. Some things moving, a door shaking, stuff like that. There is a point where a Ouija board catches on fire. That part's a little insane and ridiculous, but oh well, you can't win them all. But as far as the characters and everything contained within it, it's refreshingly simple and honest. The characters are all portrayed believably. We have our main characters, Katie and Mika. I got their names right. Moving into a new house, I think, yes, moving into a new house, I think, was that a plot point? They're being haunted. They're being haunted is the thing. They're starting to get weird bumps in the night. Katie says that it's sort of been with her for a while. It's a regular happening. Mika gets this new fandangled fancy video camera and wants to set it up and play Ghost Hunter. It's a pretty simple premise. It establishes why the found footage would exist in the first place, because people don't go around filming things technically. It starts off with Mika playing around with the camera and evolves into cameras being set up specifically by Mika in an attempt to capture the paranormal activity, that's the name of the movie, that we see in the film. It works. It's a fine setup. Okay. The characters themselves are fine as well. They're pretty likable. Their chemistry is really nice and organic. That's sort of one of the bigger benefits of the found footage approach. It's that everything feels like really organic.
Big and impressive and has a really bright light on it.
Kiss the camera. What do you...
I'm not kissing the camera. How much did this cost you? How much did I'll kiss you? I'm not gonna kiss the camera. Turn the thing.
It can sink or swim. In like the last one, it feels super unorganic, so that juxtaposed with the found footage makes it feel way, way worse. But in this case, they are believable, honest interactions. I believe that Katie and Mika are people who are in this tough situation. I feel for them. I am interested in them. It's good. It's a good setup. The plot of the film is Katie and Mika trying to find this ghost. And that's about it. That's sort of the general idea. We get these little tidbits of maybe something more happening just out of frame. There's a small plot point where, like I said, Katie has been like, oh, it's been with us for years. And they find an old photo in their attic from their old house that burned down. And it's like, what? How did that get there? Is the ghost related to the house burning down? Did something happen there? It's just little sprinklings that give it a little bit of extra wiggle room before the lore building gets absolutely fucking insane in the later films. But in and of itself, it's a simple little horror film. But what I think the most impressive part, and why I actually consider Paranormal Activity 1 to be a pretty good movie, is that it focuses way, way less on the actual scares and trying to scare the audience, and more so focuses in on the psychological damage that these sort of hauntings take upon the family involved. There's a lot of time spent on the mental state of Katie and Mika, especially Katie, and how this affects her, how all of these things happening affect them, their relationship with each other, how they react to it, the fear that they feel, and it all makes the scares feel a lot more damaging to the psyche of the characters. It isn't just a thing goes bump and ooh, and then the next day everything's fine and witty one-liners. You start to see a slow deterioration in Katie and Micah's mental state. I'm gonna say that name like 30 different ways by the end of this video. You get to see this like slow deterioration, and it's a very rewarding experience to watch, because the entire time you're just kind of like, whoa, hey, things are happening. This is interesting. Again, I'm coming in with the perspective of someone who has seen the later ones, and we'll get to that. But a lot of the later ones are just sort of jump scare fests. They want to scare the audience first and foremost. Telling a story is secondary to that. But the first one really wants to tell you a story. It wants to explore some characters. There's a really good scene around the, I want to say, third act sort of area of the first film, in which Katie and Mika are awake on a couch at like the dead hours of the morning. They can't sleep. They are just exhausted. They are all at their wits' end, their complete last straw from everything that's been happening. Just all the scares, the strain it's been putting on their relationship, the threat that this thing is starting to evolve into. It's all just wearing down on them, and they just sort of have a moment to like vent and sigh heavily and sort of just stew in how fucked up everything is and how much they wish they weren't in it.
You know, gotta get some sleep once in a while.
I was scared. I couldn't be in that room anymore.
I understand.
Can't even be in this house, Mika. Can't be in my house.
And it's a really earnest and interesting scene because there's nothing particularly scary about it. It's just really disheartening and sad and personally affecting. And I think that is when the film is at its best, when it's trying to portray how far these two people can really just fall to this pervasive haunting. You know, it starts off as just a door wiggling in the night. Maybe you hear a voice, but it's starting to tug on your leg now. It's starting to seem more menacing. The fucking Ouija board catches fire. There's bangings on the door. It's getting scarier and scarier. And not only that, but there's these sort of hints that Katie is beginning to get possessed or infected in some way by this entity. That adds so much more to the sense of personal danger. Can Mika trust Katie at this point? Can Katie trust Katie? There's moments where she's blacking out and misremembering. It feels like the evil is coming not just from within the house, but within Katie. And they sort of hone in on that sense of hopelessness, this idea that, like, I can't run from this house because I can't run from me. The fear, the scary thing is in me, not just the house. It's inescapable. And that's like a really terrifying thought that they really explore very well. There was a certain point near the very end of the film where a little light switch just sort of hit my brain. And it may be because of the copious amounts of weed I had to smoke in order to get through these films for the most part. But I started to think to myself, wait a second, was this an allegory for cancer? I was thinking about how they spend so much time focusing on the threat within Katie that she can't escape, that's been following and mutating and growing inside of her, and the strain that it puts on Micah and Katie's relationship, the sense of your own body becoming unfamiliar to you, you're losing your sense of self and who you are, you feeling like you're being torn apart from the inside by an outside agent you have no control over. And I thought to myself, doesn't that kind of sound like cancer? I mean, sure, to a very extreme, bleak conclusion, but that's sort of what allegories are for heightening reality, to explore something that is very real and grounded and difficult to talk about. So maybe not exactly cancer, but maybe just an allegory generally for life-threatening illnesses or medical problems in general. This idea that they start from inside of you, they feel inescapable, they make you feel powerless, they put a strain on your psyche and your relationships with other people as you struggle through with them. You begin to feel like an outsider within your own body as it tears you apart. These are all kind of things that you could say about Katie and her battles with the demon in the film. So to that extent, it's a smart film. There are things to take apart. There is something happening in this movie that is interesting. But that's about it. It's a short, concise, hour and a half. It's a little bit spooky. There's some pretty effective scares throughout it. Again, it's just solid. If you want to watch any of the Paranormal Activity films, start with this one and end with this one. You don't have to watch anything else. This movie is actually pretty good, and it holds up pretty well. And then they get worse. So next we have Paranormal Activity 2, which stars Katie's sister, Kylie, Christy, and Christy's newborn kid, Hunter. This is when the lore of the Paranormal Activity universe starts to come into play, and dear God, is it insane. So the film starts off with this family involving the sister, daughter from a previous marriage, their new husband, and their newborn child, Hunter. That's the household that we have, and I think there's a dog there, if I remember correctly. I think there's a dog. Yeah, there's a dog. Okay. It starts off with them getting robbed, and therefore they set up a security camera system. And I think that that's a really intelligent, interesting way to get around the shtick from the first film of setting up cameras, that found footage. You always need a solution to why people are filming everything, just to explain it so it doesn't feel awkward. And including it as all security cameras is really smart. I think it's really natural and interesting. It's a good fix. So good on you, movie. It's one of the very few good points you have. Another good point is the characters. Again, they feel natural. They feel fine. There's a little bit of focus on witty, funny writing, which I think is kind of lame at points. There's a really weird scene at the very beginning where I thought the person behind the camera was the daughter's boyfriend.
There she is.
What's up, brother from another mother?
What?
No, Hunter's in. You're never allowed to come in here, ever, unless I invite you, in which case it's going to be the best day of your life.
And then it turned out to be their stepdad. I don't know, just strange energy all about. It was odd, but regardless, it's fine. They interact well. I care about the characters. The main issue is if you wanted to get to know these characters, see how they get affected by, you know, all the evil stuff going on. Too fucking bad. All that cool, subtle stuff from the first Paranormal Activity where we get to see their psyche slowly degrade and get really, you know, zoomed in on what's happening. No, none of that. None of that anymore. Oops. This is when the series starts taking on its more haunted house sort of style. What I mean by that is the camera moves around the house and things jump out and go boo. It's this idea of it's less focusing on the characters and what they're going through and anything about the story, and it's solely beginning to focus on just jumping out, scaring the audience, setting up jump scares, all that spooky nonsense. And it really suffers for that. You don't really care too much, especially not as much as the last film, about these characters by the end of it. So you don't care that most of them end up, spoiler alert, fucking dead by the end of it. The one thing that you can care about is the lore, because I think that the lore surrounding the series is like this close to being something interesting. It's the most unique part about the series, the fact that the entire series is this like snake eating its own tail. It all revolves around the like sort of central thing that happens, which is essentially covered in Paranormal Activity 1 and 2. It's like a pairing. They happen like days apart from each other. The Paranormal Activity 2 is a prequel to Paranormal Activity 1 by like 2 weeks, I think, and then by the end of Paranormal Activity 2, the timelines have like crossed over. The events are directly happening at the same time. From these two films, you have our one central point that all the other films sort of circle back to in some way, and that's almost interesting, but they flub it a lot. And I think the setup in the second one is why. You just really don't give a shit about a lot that's going on within the film. Some of the scares are okay, some of them are pretty lame. There's a couple of neat ones, but for the most part, it's just sort of whatever. It's not the worst film. It's not the best film. It's kind of just like, eh. Again, it's a slow decline in quality. So, like, by the end of this, they're going to be really, really bad. And I'm going to have a lot to say, I hope. But as of now, it's like, whatever. It's whatever. We're introduced to the lore. Let's talk more about that. Paranormal Activity 3 is a prequel. It takes place in, like, the 80s or something, I think. And it involves the sisters, Kayla and Christy, as like 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds or whatever. And it's about them as kids, first being sort of attached to this demon. And this is when we get sort of introduced to the main antagonist of the entire series, Toby the Demon, which is the thing that haunts any given character in any given movie. It's always Toby the Demon. So first off the bat, fucking excellent name for a demon, Toby, especially considering recent events. But for the most part, I think this is a fine initiative to create a big bad. They treat him like Voldemort as the series goes on, like this fucking big bad that needs to get resurrected by a cult or something. It gets really lame. I preferred it when it was just like an abstract, incorporeal threat. But irregardless, Paranormal Activity gets more and more focused as the series goes on building on its lore rather than telling self-contained, interesting stories. So, of course, Paranormal Activity 3 is entirely lore. We get the backstory of how the first girl from Paranormal Activity 1 gets attached to the demon, how it starts to infect her, how it starts to tear their family apart, and eventually how it ends in the family dying in the fire that was mentioned in the first one. It all wraps back around to that original plot point. But the quality of the film itself kind of sucks. The retro style, like the costumes and the hairstyles and the architecture and the old camera, that's neat. It's all like a neat sort of frame narrative for the whole thing. There's some interesting enough gimmicks and shticks and workarounds. But again, they start feeling less natural and more like, oh, okay, that's neat. Like, instead of the very natural first or second film where the cameras are security cameras or set up at the foot of the bed to catch paranormal activity like you'd see someone do on a YouTube video or something like that, they're mounting these giant VHS cameras to fans that they've modified so that it can pan and capture an entire large open space living room continuously, and they have to swap out the tapes constantly throughout the day. It starts to become more and more obvious that they are committed to this shtick out of obligation and not because they actually want to be doing it. It always feels like, oh, okay, that's how they got away with it this time, not just a natural way to tell the story. But I will admit, retrofitting an old fan to be like a swivel for the camera is fun and interesting and fine. I'm willing to forget it because it is It isn't the ghost video from Ghost Dimension, so that's fine. And this is like a turning point for the series, in my opinion, because this is when it really starts to go into the deep end and completely stop focusing on anything character related, anything story driven. It is all about the lore, and it is all about scaring the audience. This is when the haunted house, approach that I spoke of earlier kicks into full gear. It really is just like people running through with cameras and people jumping out and going, whoa, holy shit, or like a low rumbling for 5 minutes of uninterrupted silence. And then something pops out and goes, whoop-a-boo-boo. It's really annoying, and it becomes really obvious when something is going to jump out, and most of the time when it actually did get me, it was like a cheap fake out. And again, how much is an unearned jump scare really worth in the grand scheme of things when the entire rest of the film is just boring and not tense in any way? This is also when the film begins to lose all of its subtlety and just starts going completely apeshit. This is when we get introduced to the satanic cult that is trying to specifically resurrect Toby through this family because of prophecy bullshit. That's why Hunter was relevant in Paranormal Activity 2. I forgot to mention that in the end of Paranormal Activity 2, Christy, or whatever the fuck from the first movie, comes and steals Hunter, the baby, from her sister and kills her sister and whatnot, because this is like a prophecy child who's going to be reborn into Toby or whatever. That's what we figure out in Paranormal Activity 3. Again, we started off with just a movie about one girl in a haunted house with some doors creaking and opening at the end being fully possessed by a demon. Like that's kind of where it is. It's a little bit silly, but it's not satanic cults kidnapping children silly yet. But now it is. So believability is out the window. There's beds being thrown around, people being dragged everywhere. It's not just subtle doors opening and closing now. It's just the most insane, stupid shit you can think of. Ghosts are causing earthquakes and what. There is a very interesting shot at the beginning portion of the film in which the two parents are attempting to film a sex tape before they're interrupted by an earthquake, which I think is hinted at being caused by the ghost. I think it's a ghost-caused earthquake. I don't know. But the camera falls over, and we see as they run out to go get their kids and whatnot, and the camera remains on the floor. As the dust falls from the ceiling, it starts to collect in a silhouette sort of shape of a person, like it's falling on top of an invisible person there. It's a little bit, it's hard to catch, it's subtle, it's interesting. And then they add like a big loud noise to it and make it like drop all at once, and it's just, it's terrible. And that trend of taking what could be interesting and subtle and ruining it continues on. Like I said, Paranormal Activity 3 is overall pretty boring. It's whatever. Again, I'm going to be saying that about a lot of them, because until we get to Ghost Dimension, they really are just kind of middling, mediocre things that just progressively get a little bit worse before Ghost Dimension takes a fucking swan dive into hell and is the worst thing I've ever seen. But for the most part, this is really telling of what the series is going to become. Nothing subtle, nothing interesting anymore. It's just films explicitly made to get jump scary reactions out of the audience so that they can do that stupid ad campaign where they put cameras in test audience theaters and showed them jumping and going on, was like, look how scary our movie is, you gotta go watch it. And that's all they care about now. They don't care about telling a story. They care about building their stupid lore as a weird fan service to the first one, because it was their most successful one, and scaring the audience for clickbait, essentially. Moving into Paranormal Activity 4, the same thing. It's the same thing. It's more nonsense. This is the first true sequel, so I suppose credit where credit's due. We are 4 films in and finally getting a continuation of the story from the first one. It takes place a couple of years in the future. Hunter is now a, 9-year-old, I want to say, who lives with Christy in this, she's the weird person down the street and her kid. She stumbles into this random family. Hunter stumbles into this random family's yard at one point, and they sort of take him in for a bit while Christy's in the hospital for whatever reason. And Hunter acts weird and kids are creepy, and we start to see the resurgence of the imaginary friend trope, which shows up in 3 out of these films. This idea of look, this kid's talking to an imaginary friend called Toby, and it's telling her to do weird things, and shh, don't tell your dad. Aren't kids scary? and you don't have to actually put any work into making anything happen because you're just using scary little kid imagery, and ooh, how creepy. Kids say the darndest things. I'm starting to get more mad. These films suck a lot. Paranormal Activity 4 is, without a doubt, the most boring one. There is less of a reason for there to be anything filmed. There's a weird thing where the main girl, who's a teen, and her boyfriend records their FaceTime or Skype calls or whatever, because he's fucking weird and creepy, and that becomes where some of the source material comes from and how they get the idea to start recording stuff, because, oh, look at this creepy thing that happened. We should start recording properly. And they set up cameras everywhere. So it's sort of like a setup from the first one. It's got this weird Skype angle that makes the boyfriend character like really unlikable immediately, and that continues on throughout the film. He's just an annoying gag character that sucks and is kind of a creep. And then the main shtick of this film that separates it from all the rest, because apparently now it's not just finding a solution, it's finding a gimmick to show in the marketing. Like the third one was, ooh, look, it's in the 80s and we have all these grassroots technology and VHSs. What do we do for the fourth one to set it apart? I'm not fucking making this up, they use a Kinect. An Xbox Kinect. Remember an Xbox Kinect? So an Xbox Kinect was this peripheral for the Xbox, which was all hands-free. It was a camera where it would, like, send out all these motion tracking dots into the fucking house and whatnot. And you usually wouldn't be able to see them. You could only see them, like, through the camera's actual eye and how it was registering it. And you would move around, and it would sort of analyze where you were moving and control your character in-game based on that. So you could play games without controllers. You could do this, and your character would do this, because a camera was looking at you and knew that you were doing this. That's the plain and simple. So they use this fucking Kinect camera and its stupid-ass orbs to, like, introduce scares. Like, there's points where the characters are chilling on the couch in the living room, and you'll see, like, a figure move by in the background, like, as the tracking orbs from the Kinect start moving with it. And it makes no fucking sense. You could have just had a figure moving in the background. There was no need for the Kinect gimmick in any way. It's aged so poorly, because who the hell gives a shit about the fucking Kinect anymore? It's just a really weird point of the film. But okay, whatever. So there's the dumbass Kinect thing. What else happens in this movie? It's so boring. It's hard to remember. I don't care about any of the characters. I don't remember any of their names. I barely remember the names of the first, like, the main girls who are in almost every movie, because they stupidly named them the same thing. I'm getting mad. See? I'm getting mad. Krista, Kayla, Kylie, Okay. Anyways, so the fourth one's really ridiculous. It's okay. So the idea of the fourth one is Hunter's growing up, and clearly we've already established that Hunter's like this fucking evil chosen one who's gonna bring Toby a human body or whatever. And you're like, okay, so then why isn't Christy giving a shit about him? Why is he over at this random family's house while she's in the hospital or whatever? And then they do a plot twist. This is the only Paranormal Activity I know of that has like a plot twist, and it's that the kid that is named Hunter, the one that like wanders into their house and they sort of like pseudo adopt for a few days, isn't actually Hunter. It's just some random kid. The real Hunter is the son of the family, who I haven't mentioned because otherwise he is irrelevant. That's Hunter, because he was adopted as a kid. So let's break this down. At the end of Paranormal Activity 2, Katie kills Kyla or whoever and takes her kid Hunter, and we never see her again until Paranormal Activity 4, which is like 9 years down the line. And now all of a sudden, she has a different kid who isn't Hunter in her possession, and this random family has adopted Hunter. So somewhere along this 8-year gap, in order to make this stupid plot twist work, she had to have somehow lost Hunter. Hunter ended up in the, like, adoption system of America somehow, was adopted by this family. She found another kid that she would have to have kidnapped. She couldn't have adopted her because, remember, she's still a missing person. She's still, like, wanted for murder and shit like that. So she's, like, under a new identity maybe or something, but she can't just waltz in and adopt someone. Or maybe she can. I don't know. Maybe she did adopt this new kid and the film just doesn't give a shit. I don't know, but let's just assume, because at the end of the film there's, like, this weird fucking possessed cult of white suburban moms. Maybe it's just a kid of another cult member. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. The main point is, how the fuck do you lose a kid that you kidnapped when you're haunted? Did he like crawl out of the fucking crib? The kid doesn't seem to have any memory of this, so it's implied that he was adopted super young, like as a toddler or before long-term memories start getting really implanted, because he doesn't seem to mention it too much. It's a plot twist because it doesn't get brought up too much. He doesn't recognize the parent or anything. So did you just leave it in Walmart? What fucking happened? How did you lose the kid? It's a stupid plot point. It's a stupid plot twist. It makes no sense. It's pointless. I hate it. This movie, it fucking sucks. It's so bad. Not to mention this whole Bleach fucking nonsense that has to happen with the whole Aizen, fucking all according to Keikaku, I planned it since your birth sort of nonsense, where they move into this house down the street. Thank God it was up for sale, I guess. And then this kid wanders into their backyard, and they just so happen to start taking care of him when her mother presumably pretends to go to the hospital, all because they needed an in to get to their son Hunter. That's how they infiltrate. The Kyla or Katie or whatever the fuck sends this random kid in like an infiltration spy soldier, and somehow like it just works out. What would have happened if like there wasn't a house up for sale down the street, or like you got found out for being a fucking wanted possessed criminal or something? Why would you make the actual mother of this fake kid Kyla or Katie or whatever the fuck, and not just another random cult member? What would you have done if they didn't take care of the kid and just brought him to like child protective services or something? Like, what if they just didn't let the kid into their house? I'm losing my fucking mind. Anyways, that's all I have to say about Paranormal Activity 4. It's bad. Don't watch it. It makes no sense. It's bad. Now we get to talk about a one I like, Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. It is like a standalone spin-off, almost. It is the least related to the originals in any way other than just pure fan service that doesn't tie into the lore in any significant or meaningful way. And it's all the fucking better for it, because at this point, as you can tell by my rant, this lore has gotten really fucking weird. It has gotten really convoluted and stupid, and they don't know what they're doing with it anymore. I don't know what they're doing with it anymore. Let's just distance ourselves. And it focuses on a Hispanic family growing up and doing their thing, and of course, you know, they end up in spooky situations, and it's fine. It's good. It's pretty good. It's interesting because it's not like a direct haunting as much as it is a Chronicle-esque found footage superhero movie turned dark to a certain way. Like, the haunting isn't just like a ghoul or a ghost or Toby or anything like that. They stumble, the main kids find out that their like downstairs neighbor is some witchy chick or something and doing some weird cult rituals because she's a part of the Toby cult or whatever. So they break into her house one day to have sex with random girls they met at a party, and they, you know, stumble upon shit they shouldn't have, and now, possession or whatnot, and they go fuck around in a church and do a ritual, and it brings a demon up. Whatever. Okay, so we have like a setup, but the important part is that the characters are interesting. I like them. They're fun. They're organic. I care about them. They are written well. I give a shit once more about the characters in a Paranormal Activity film. Oh my god, thank you. Oh, but the main point where this film begins to get unique and weird and interesting is around like the middle to later portion of the film, in which the main kid starts to essentially get superpowers. Like, he starts to find out that he can like lean back and catch himself with ghost energy, or like move stuff and whatnot, and can like throw people across rooms and whatnot. And it starts to feel a lot like Chronicle, in which like these characters are discovering these powers, but like, you know, that there's this sort of dark, sinister undertone to it all, which is cool because Chronicle's a good movie that I like, so anything that makes it feel more like a good movie is welcome in my mind. Fuck that one guy that wrote it though. Yeah, I mean, there's this one batshit insane part where he like teleports into the middle of a room and like blows up the room or something. That was insane and weird and fucking hilarious. But I mean, that's sort of what this movie is. It's ridiculous and insane. Again, remember back when it was just like a door moving and now it's shit like this? Yeah, but this film feels more like it actually knows that it's being a little bit ridiculous and weird, and just sort of leans into that and has some goofy fun with it, and it's fine. It's a nice breath of fresh air. You know, all the characters are enjoyable. The set pieces are enjoyable. It's not good. It's not great. but goddamn, is it refreshing after 4. Oh my god. It's easily my second favorite film after Paranormal Activity 1. Easily. Not because it's of the same quality in any way, but because, you know, if the series has gotten to this point, let's just have fun with it, why don't we? And then on the opposite end of that, we have Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension. It is the worst one. It is the last one. It is the last one in the chronology of the series, and hopefully it will bury the series forever, or they just reboot it because there's no coming back from this. It's so bad. It's so bad. Oh, so the gimmick of this one is they stumble upon this random family that moves into a house, and I'm pretty sure it's the house from the third one. I think it's the house from the third one. It has to be. Okay, yeah, so it's the house from the third one, and they stumble upon this old video camera that was owned by the cult, and they start playing the VHSs, and they're like, whoa, look at all this cult shit from, like, you know, Kayla and Katie's childhood when they're trying to, like, raise them to be cult leaders who are going to get possessed by Toby and bear Toby's child or whatever. They're like, oh, look at that, it's a cult, that's fucking crazy, look at this crazy cult, that's so nuts, what's this kooky camera that I'm going to use for no reason? There's, like, no good gimmick as to why they start using the camera. The guy just records a lot. They do a thing where, like, he's a director or a cinematographer, or he shoots, like, weddings or something, so he likes playing with cameras, but, like, there's no good reason why he's filming everything. And he starts filming everything with this old camera, and it turns out that this old camera can see into the ghost dimensions. They mentioned something about, like, oh, it's got, like, 7 flux capacitors or some shit, which means that it can see into the another dimension. So it's like this camera. And all that it actually ends up doing is having scares where, like, one regular camera will show a hallway, and then it'll cut to the ghost camera, and you'll see some shitty CGI on the fucking ceiling in the ghost camera, and it's like, whoa, oh my god, shitty CGI on the ceiling. There's this weird 3D gimmick, so all the scares of this film have, like, shit coming out at you, and it's all insanely ridiculous and stupid and silly. There's no way to properly portray it, because unlike Paranormal 4, where there's, like, a distinct plot twist and writing that sucks, everything in this film is just so ridiculous. It's so hard to take seriously. It's like I'm watching fucking Spy Kids. It's just shitty CGI jumping out at you. Again, I watched the first one and then right to this. So I got, like, you know, footprints in salt that look inhuman, and that's the scary part for this scene, to, like, fucking running away from a ghost hand that pops out of this dude and scratches at the camera, and it's like, whoa. It's insane to stress just how stupidly ridiculous this film is. There's no taking it seriously anymore, and it's not in the fun way like in the marked ones, because I don't care about these characters. They suck. They are written so bad. All the believability in the found footage format is gone. They are all written like fucking the worst B horror movie characters. They do nothing but say exposition to each other and shitty one-liners that are attempts at humor that make no sense and don't endear you to the characters in any way.
Is your energy blocked, Mike?
Mike's energy?
I'm flowing nicely. If you want to relieve some sort of blockage,
Yeah.
that's... I don't know what we're talking about anymore.
It is a mess. Everything about this film is constantly battling itself, and it just fucking falls apart into a bloody mess. It's so bad. So you have this film whose sole intent is to scare you. The connection to the first series is, or the connection to the rest of the series is so loose. It's barely there. It's, you know, they find the tapes, and now their daughter is being haunted by Toby to be the new thing to resurrect him because she was born on, like, the same day as Hunter or something like that. I don't know. That's sort of the thing. So this is the first movie where we actually physically see Toby, which is cool and great because it completely lessens the scare of never actually knowing what he looks like in all the rest of the films, because now he just looks like a shitty CGI Voldemort. Cool, great, awesome, guys. And that's it. That's how this series ends. Toby is resurrected. He's a demon guy that I don't give a shit about, and he's not scary or imposing in any way anymore, and it ends, and that's it. That's it. That's all there is. So as far as connections to building the lore go, it's loose. It's just trying to, like, wrap it up, because I think they knew at this point they weren't getting another movie. So they just wanted to wrap up the story in a loose way, and again, it just feels like fan service. It feels like they just wanted to prey upon the good things they had built in the first few films and build off of that in the most annoying, unsubtle, shitty ways possible. So to that point, the lore, nothing being built, nothing special. So what's this film about? It's about fucking scaring the audience. It's the peak of the haunted house spooks. Every scene is cameras going around and shit jumping out at you and going boo and it's like you're walking through a haunted house attraction on Halloween, and all the actors are just jumping out at you at every corner because the only point of it is to get your adrenaline pumping and give you a little spook. That's the entire point of the movie. It is so much worse for it because the second one, they had those scares. They had that adrenaline pumping. But underneath it all, there was this like really heartfelt, interesting story about people. And we cared about the people involved. And we don't care anymore. And we don't care about the lore because it's all ridiculous and stupid and generic for the most part. We care about the people that you set up. We care about seeing these people be affected by things. We want to connect with people. We don't want to just have things jump out and go boo. And that's probably why the series died with this one, because it's the least human one. The characters don't feel like people. You don't care about them. They could die. They do often in like unceremonious ways, and you don't give a shit. Like, oh no, that character's dead. Who cares? I don't care about him. I don't care about anything anymore. This movie made me depressed. I'm sure as you can see from the clips I'm showing that it all looks like shit. So none of the scares land because it just looks like shit. I'm too busy laughing at how ridiculous it all is, how bad the CGI is, to actually be scared by any of it. Sure, it got me to jump a few times, but what's that worth? There's not a good movie underneath it anymore. What's that worth? Because when all you have is jumpy outies and spooks like that, you're not even getting good scares. This is a good time for me to talk about better horror movies. Take a film like Insidious. There is a really good scare in Insidious in which a character is walking through a house. And as they walk by this one room, in the corner, subtly, you can see a figure of a kid. And that's it. There's no big fucking violin hit. There's no, like, it doesn't jump out and grab her. It's just there. If you don't notice it on your first watch, you can't be blamed for that because it's subtle and it's interesting. That's cool. I like stuff like that. I like when it's not, like, in your face. This is the most in your face fucking movie ever. Another example is in another much better horror film that I don't even like that much, The Conjuring. There's this scene in which one of like the daughter characters wakes up in the middle of the night or something like that. I don't know. It's been years since I've seen it, but they wake up and they claim that they see something in the shadow of the door. They claim someone is standing there, and the camera keeps cutting back, and she keeps going, "Yo, I swear someone's there," and it cuts back to the door, and it cuts back to her and her sisters, and her sister's like, "I don't see nothing. What are you talking about?" She's like, "No, you don't see it. It's right there," and the camera cuts back to the door, and the entire time you're like, do I see anything? I don't know. It's too dark. And it starts to get in your head. Every time the camera cuts back, you're looking for something, but you're scared. You don't want to see something spooky, so you're kind of like, is there? And it leaves you in this weird limbo. There's no like, ooh, big jumpy outie or anything like that. It's a really subtle scare that preys upon the fear of the unknown, which is a lot of what the first one was. This idea of like, oh, did something just happen? Did I just see something? Stuff like that is really effective and cool. This film just throws it out of the fucking window. Everything's jumping out at you in fucking 3D. Put on your glasses, bro. Whoa. It's really bad. It's really bad. I'm just ranting at this point. I didn't have a script for this video, as I'm sure you can tell. I'm jumping around because I thought it would be fun to have like a really natural retrospective on this old series that I watched for the first time a few weeks ago, and just sort of my understanding of it from a total outsider perspective from the whole cultural phenomenon that it was. And looking back at it, I can confidently say now, it is a franchise built upon the fucking wavering back of a decent film. The Paranormal Activity 1 does so much fucking legwork to make this series not absolutely worthless trash. The first film is good. It is a good foundation. It is a good film. I like it. I genuinely like it. Everything after it is increasing levels of trash. Even the marked ones, which I liked. It's really trashy and bad and not worth watching over, again, Chronicle, for example. I was just like Stockholm syndromed, I guess, and was gonna take any serotonin I could get in this marathon. And again, yeah, I had fun, but I had fun because I was watching with my friends who I like and I have fun with, not because the film itself was fun. And we could have watched anything and had that much fun, except for Scary Movie 2, apparently. And apparently they're making a new one. So if they reboot it, which I think they should, cool. Because there's a lot of cool things happening. I've been mentioning a lot about the lore being built around it, and that's kind of like, again, the most unique part of this series, which I think is cool. This idea that it's a series of like 6 films that all focus on just one central family, like these 2 sisters. Everything tracks back to them. Everything is about them in that instance. That's neat. Exploring these 2 characters and this one event of like this cult trying to resurrect Toby. Through a series of different films, approaching it from like varying angles, you know, like directly their childhood. Now it's their neighbor over here. It's like you're getting different camera views on one subject at varying, you know, lengths and positions. That's interesting. That's neat. It's so horribly executed and the lore is boring and generic, so it doesn't actually matter. But it's interesting and it's unique. And if they reboot it, I hope they try that kind of thing again. I just pray to God it's nothing like The Ghost Dimension. I hope it's not a direct sequel, because I think we've fully explored this sort of like lore at this point. Like everything is sort of wrapped up. The only place they could go as a sequel would be the fucking trying to destroy Toby, the now born into the world demon, which would be absolutely insanely ridiculous and stupid. I don't know. Maybe they get like Evil Dead style comedy it. I don't know. The Blair Witch fucking sequel was not too good, so I don't have faith in these like found footage reboots. That's another movie that's really good. Watch Blair Witch Project. That movie slaps. It's like that thing that I was saying about like The Conjuring and Insidious, where it's like cool subtle scares. That's the entirety of Blair Witch Project. It is all just like, holy shit, am I seeing something? Is something there? I don't know. It rules. I fucking love Blair Witch Project. Go watch that. I'm ranting now. I'm losing the plot. I need to wrap this up. I don't know. I needed to make this video because I needed to justify watching all of those movies. And I felt like I had at least a few things to say about it, so I said them. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. If you're going to watch one movie, watch the first one. None of the others. The rest of them suck. Fuck Paranormal Activity 4. Fuck Paranormal Activity The Ghost Dimension. Just absolute disasters of movies that make me so mad. Anyways, call to action. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Hit that like. Why don't you leave a comment? Why don't you kiss me on the lips? You know? All this stuff you can do. And I promise it'll be super fun. I have a green screen now. Who knows what I'm going to do with it? Maybe I'll figure out how to light things soon. You know? Who fucking knows? Maybe I'll do a backflip in my next video. I don't know. You don't know either. You don't know me. This is a parasocial relationship. All 8 of you. All right, I'm effectively losing my mind. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to my rambles. Let me know what kind of content you want to see in the future. Let me know if you like this. Let me know if you hated it. Let me know what your favorite color is, your favorite fruit, and your social security number. Good night.